one of my messages I'm always mentioning time and time again is the idea of we on the left need to talk more about business. Now, we're going to talk about taxing today. And most of this, when it comes to these big tech businesses, Apple, Meta, Google, Amazon, etc., should be taxed. And there are ways that we can do that. But these companies use tax loopholes, they move profits abroad. So they do all this stuff that we could do, that we could act on, which would gain a lot of money into the economy. And bear in mind, this is different because we are talking about taxing companies where a lot of people really focus about, wealth tax, taxing the wealthy. And don't get me wrong, if you've read Professor Richard Murphy's blog, Tax Research, and when he talks about the wealth tax, while a wealth tax would work, it's not the most effective thing if you really wanted to tax wealthy and rich individuals. But if you wanted to tax businesses, you could put something like a wealth tax very easily because they can't avoid it. Or as we've seen with the EU, you have a one of the things that triggered Brexit was ultimately the idea that the EU was going to put a big sort of fence on that if you wanted to move your profits, from being taxed outside of Europe, well, then you would have to pay money on that still. And there's a lot of evidence to say that's when Brexit really started. Like I say, that was very much in 2012. And this is something we can see here right now. So a campaign group has come out today and said that we are losing in the UK over £2 billion in tax revenue from these big companies because they're just able to shift all their wealth abroad and for it not to be taxed. And they can do that legally because the UK government chooses to do nothing about it. But yes, taxing businesses, definitely something we need to do. But as I've always said, most of the criticisms we're going to hear about the massive, big, global, corporate companies, I'm all on board with. The thing is it comes to the UK business infrastructure, and when you realise that over 80% of businesses in the UK aren't these big, massive companies, the SMEs who employ anywhere between 500 to between 10 people when you become classed as an SME at that point. What do we offer them? Walk out into your town or local area, and maybe you have an Amazon warehouse or that, but ultimately, your big employer ain't Amazon. It's all these multiple different smaller companies that make up the businesses in your town that might have a couple of different, like maybe 2 or 3 locations up and down the country. They tend to be the biggest employers in small towns in these areas. We've got to think, what can we offer people like this? Because at the end of the day, these people have money. And if there's one group of people that have been really turned off from giving their money to the Conservative Party more than recently, it's these types of businesses because they are British-based businesses who want their businesses to do well. They want to see them grow because that would be, again, good for the economy. The Conservatives are no longer the party of British business. And I think it is an opportunity for Labour, and it's certainly an opportunity for the left to go, hey, British businesses, we are speaking to you. What do you want? What would be good? What could we do from a leftist perspective? Not just, yes, I agree, unions, everyone, I'm sure there'll be people talking about, we need to have socialize the sort of the business structure. So you have sort of every person in that workplace gets that. But again, I'm not really for that because I don't want to really force people into that. I don't think that's fair. But if a company decides to go in that direction, then that's fine. If like 10 people want to get together and create that type of business, then that's fine. That should be encouraged. And banks should be more willing to sort of lend money to sort of that type of enterprise. Again, that means a sort of change in rules and regulations that we could do. There's a lot of stuff that we could do, but it is a conversation, and it is something that I think people on the left need to have with businesses, because if you then get them on board, guess who can then drop, to 500, two to £3,000 in donations to leftist causes, leftist, parties. It's them. And as we said, politics, you need money to run campaigns. You can't not run a campaign with no money. But hey, we're not talking about that today. We're talking about this tax, and especially when it comes to big international businesses, because there is stuff we can do on this. The EU's already done it. There is nothing that could stop us from replicating that, or even going to the EU and say, "Hey, we want to be part of this scheme as well." And as we always talked about, working together with the EU, very positive step to eventually rejoining it. So we're just going to go over this article quickly, because I think it just highlights the problem that we lose in tax in this country on this. So this comes from The Guardian with the title of UK lost out on over $2 billion in tax in 2021 as big tech companies have shifted profits aboard claim campaigners. The UK might have missed out on as much as £2 billion in tax in 2021 from big tech companies, shifting their profits elsewhere, according to an estimate by a group campaigning for greater tax transparency. And this is the big problem of wealth shifting to a different country, so all that never gets taxed. It's a big problem. Certainly in the wake of 2008, this was one of the big points that was pointed out, that after 2008, when we were trying to sort of recover, companies were engaged in this type of activity, shifting billions of pounds out of the country so it wouldn't be taxed. That could have massively helped a lot of countries help to recover. This is why it went into a big sort of European Union initiative. And of course, we saw, should we say, at that point, the Brexit campaign be stepped up. But it continues. So 7 of the biggest US headquartered tech companies, including Apple, Microsoft, and Google, and owner Alphabet, are estimated to have paid just £750 million in UK corporation tax and digital sales, compared with over £2.8 billion in the estimated tax due to having profits routed elsewhere, according to TaxWatch, a campaign group. The big multinational companies have complicated structures using different subsidiaries around the world, and in many cases makes it almost near impossible for observers to calculate how much tax they have paid in the UK and whether that amounts to the paid aligned with the amount of activity in the UK. To try and target and get around that data, or that lack of data, TaxWatch has estimated just how much UK tax these global companies would have paid if their British subsidiaries had declared profits at the same rate as they declare them worldwide. And there is no suggestion these companies are involved have evaded tax illegally. But Apple and Microsoft are the world's 2 biggest public companies, and by market value, while Alphabet is the 4th behind oil company Saudi Armano, and TaxWatch, the analysis, has also included Amazon and Facebook owner Meta, the 5th and 7th largest, plus the companies of CISO and Photoshop maker Adobe. TaxWatch has estimated that at least 7 companies had made over £6.5 billion in UK revenues over the 2021 tax year. With the latest for all these full accounts are available, and of that, the group estimates that the companies made at least £14.8 billion in UK profits by applying global profit margins. At the UK tax rate of 19%, that would mean at least £2.8 billion would be due. However, by looking at all the tax paid by the UK subsidiaries, TaxWatch estimates that they have only paid £735 million to the UK corporation tax and the digital sales tax, £2 billion less than might have been expected. The group does readily admit that its figures can only be rough estimates, given that the lack of data and the public company reports. But it says that lack of transparency is part of the problem, which could be solved country by country tax reporting. If that is, figures are likely to be more realistically to estimate and of profits in the UK. Although Amazon has disputed this, assessing that the underlying assumptions are incorrect. um, this is always the case. You always see stories like this, but this is part of the big problem, and we lose, as you can see, a lot of money. We lose billions potentially in not doing stuff like this, and country by country reporting saying, okay, um, all your subsidiaries in this country, how much did they make? What happened? It's easy for Amazon just to go, well, I'll just move this over to another subsidiary, and then that's not profit that we have to pay. So you can see that in this world there is a lot of murkiness, a lot of non-reporting, shall we say? Although, of course, these companies will deny such activity. This has long been talked about. It's long been seen as a problem of the lack of transparency that goes on in these companies. Well, we made this amount while random subsidiary that they happen to own just happens to have all this massive profit. Well, hold on, what did this subsidiary actually do? Oh no, you know. Um, it's, to be honest, a big problem, and I've said before, I am very much on board with what the left has to say about these big multinational companies, especially when it comes to non-payment of tax, because we can put a lot of that money to good use in this country. So certainly something that does, I think, need to be addressed in the long run. But as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, please do remember to click on the like, share, and comments at the comment button. And of course, there's the Pony Club, there's the Patreon page, there's the Buy Me Coffee link. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.